Charles Sanders Peirce, Pragmatism, Pragmatism, and the Scientific Method. What if the meaning of every idea you've ever had, every belief, every theory, every guiding principle, could be summed up entirely by its practical consequences? And what if truth itself was not a static property but the end result of an ongoing, collective search that might never truly end? That's the world according to Charles Sanders Peirce, the founder of pragmatism, creator of the term pragmatism, and one of the most original philosophical minds of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Today, we're unpacking his views on pragmatism, pragmaticism, fallibilism, and the scientific method, and exploring why his ideas remain not only relevant but urgently needed in how we think, decide, and act today. Setting the stage, who was Peirce? Charles Sanders Peirce, born in 1839, was not just a philosopher. He was a logician, a scientist, and a thinker who left his mark on fields ranging from mathematics to semiotics. He's often credited as the founder of pragmatism, but he was also its most exacting critic. Peirce believed that philosophy's job wasn't to sit in the clouds, detached from life, but to help us navigate reality. And for him, that meant rooting philosophy in the practical, in ideas that worked, in beliefs that proved their worth through consequences, and in methods of inquiry that could stand the test of time. Pragmatism, the maxim of meaning. At the heart of Peirce's pragmatism is what he called the pragmatic maxim: consider what effects that might conceivably have practical bearings, we conceive the object of our conception to have. Then, our conception of these effects is the whole of our conception of the object. Translated into everyday language, the meaning of an idea is found entirely in its practical effects. If you want to know what truth means, don't get lost in abstract definitions. Look at what happens when people act on a belief, how it shapes their behavior, the results it produces, and the problems it solves. Peirce's pragmatism is a philosophy of usefulness. It treats ideas as tools. For example, if you're deciding between two job offers, the pragmatic approach isn't to dwell endlessly on ideals or labels, but to ask, which choice will actually bring better concrete outcomes, more fulfillment, stability, or growth, in your life? Pragmatism, refining the idea. Over time, Peirce felt that his original idea of pragmatism had been watered down, especially by fellow philosophers like William James, who emphasized its more flexible, even subjective, elements. So Peirce drew a hard line. He coined a new term, pragmaticism, which he joked was so ugly that no one else would try to steal it. Pragmatism sharpened the focus. Instead of looking only at immediate, short-term outcomes, Peirce wanted to tie meaning to long-term habits of action, and the general laws of nature. In other words, what counts is not just what works today, but what holds up over decades, centuries, or even longer. Consider the concept of justice. A pragmatic approach might focus on how fair policies improve society right now. But a pragmaticist approach asks, will these policies hold up under the test of time? Will they contribute to stability, fairness, and progress over generations? Fallibilism, knowledge is never final. One of Peirce's most enduring contributions is his principle of fallibilism, the idea that all knowledge is provisional and open to revision. Or, as he put it, we must not pretend to know what we do not know. Fallibilism isn't a call for skepticism's sake. Instead, it's a recognition that no matter how certain we feel, our knowledge is always subject to change in light of new evidence. Science itself is the best example. Newton's laws of motion were once considered the final word, until Einstein's theory of relativity reshaped our understanding. In everyday life, fallibilism is about intellectual humility, being open to feedback, willing to change your mind, and ready to update your beliefs when reality demands it. It's what allows us to grow rather than get stuck defending outdated ideas. The scientific method, inquiry as a communal process. For Peirce, the best way to navigate this ever-changing landscape of knowledge was the scientific method. But his vision of science was broader than laboratory experiments. It was a philosophy of inquiry. The scientific method, as Peirce saw it, is self-correcting, public, and communal. It's not about clinging to authority, stubbornly holding to one's beliefs, or relying solely on intuition. It's about putting ideas to the test, sharing results openly, and letting the community of inquirers, across time and cultures, refine and improve them. Peirce famously defined truth as the opinion which is fated to be ultimately agreed to by all who investigate. In other words, truth is what we would all converge upon if we kept investigating honestly, without bias, for as long as it took. You can see this in action in the development of vaccines. Researchers across the world collaborate, exchange data, and improve methods in a collective effort to reach the most reliable conclusion. For Peirce, that is science in its purest form. Relevance to everyday life. Peirce's ideas may sound lofty, but they have very practical implications. His pragmatism is a powerful decision-making tool. Evaluate beliefs and choices based on the concrete outcomes they produce. Fallibilism fosters a growth mindset, encouraging us to keep learning and adapting rather than clinging to fixed certainties. And his vision of the scientific method can transform not only research but also how we handle disagreements, work in teams, and solve problems, by making inquiry open, collaborative, and evidence-based. Whether you're deciding a career move, designing a business strategy, or even working through a personal conflict, these principles help you stay flexible, grounded in evidence, and oriented toward long-term success. Critiques and challenges. Peirce's philosophy is not without its critics. Some argue his writing is unnecessarily complex, full of dense terminology like pragmatism, making it harder for his ideas to reach a broader audience. As philosopher Susan Hark observed, Peirce's thought is difficult to follow, but once you grasp his method, the insight it provides is profound. Others feel he put too much emphasis on the scientific method, overlooking other ways of knowing, such as personal experience, art, or intuition, perspectives championed by thinkers like Heidegger. And some criticize his idealism about ultimate agreement. They question whether humans can ever truly overcome bias, cultural difference, and historical context enough to reach the kind of universal consensus he envisioned. Postmodern thinkers like Richard Rorty have been particularly skeptical here. Why Peirce still matters. Despite these critiques, Peirce's philosophy remains one of the most rigorous and inspiring frameworks for thinking about truth, meaning, and knowledge. His pragmatic maxim reminds us that the value of ideas lies in their practical consequences. His pragmatism urges us to think in the long term. His fallibilism keeps us humble and open-minded. And his vision of science as a communal, self-correcting process points the way toward a more collaborative and reliable search for truth. Peirce challenges us not just to think, but to think well, to hold our beliefs lightly, test them rigorously, and measure them by their real-world effects. In a world overflowing with information and competing claims, that's a philosophy worth holding on to. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe to keep updated on our upcoming content.